Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of the Niche Cage Variety Show. We are from the niche-cage.com, where we write about Aotearoa sport, and you're listening to a podcast, you're watching a podcast, so we obviously spin the yarns. We dabble in a bit of Aotearoa sporting kōrero as well, always in honor of Aotearoa and Aotearoa sport. We're just here to drop some information about Aotearoa sport and the things that really tickled our fancy from the last few days of sporting action. Prior to this, we recorded our subscriber podcast. And even though Rocco Berry's getting plenty of buzz, I did deliver some asterisks around his breakout performance against the Sharks. There was a clear weakness that I will touch on in the variety show in the Sharks defense that Rocco Berry and the Warriors capitalized on. We also discussed Matt Henry being on fire and a bit of Max Mata goal scoring bits and bobs for his, who's he playing for? Sligo Rovers in Ireland as well. So that is there for the Patreon whānau and those with a paid Substack subscription. Those are two ways that you can donate to the Niche Cage and support all our mahi. Join the Patreon whānau, or you can sign up to a paid Substack subscription. Either way, the subscriber podcast gets sent to both platforms. You can do with it what you want, and then you can also drop a comment and support the Niche Cage there through Patreon or Substack. But we also have our Monday and Friday newsletter coming out via Substack. That is completely free, and that is immense. It's just Aotearoa sporting glory, paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of Aotearoa sporting information that we drop every Monday and Friday evening. You get all the links to the Niche Cage website yarns, as well as all the podcast information and any other bits and pieces you need to know about the Niche Cage. It all comes out in that Monday and Friday email newsletter via Substack. Plenty of funky Aotearoa sporting matters to discuss, but we need to get a bit of mindfulness first.
Of course. And a couple of weeks ago, when novelist Cormac McCarthy died, I took a quote from him. Well, novelist Milan Kundera died like a couple of days ago, so I've got a quote from him. This is a fella, he's from the Czech Republic, but it wasn't called the Czech Republic back then. It's become that since. So I guess he's from like Czechia or something like that. He wrote The Unbearable Lightness of Being, which is a good book. It's the only one I've read of his, but it's a very good book. Also a very good movie with a young Daniel Day-Lewis in there. For those interested, this quote here is from Unbearable Lightness of Being, and it's the first sentence is the gold nugget, but I'll read the whole thing because it's very, poetic, flowing, exciting words type thing. It goes, "For there is nothing heavier than compassion. Not even one's own pain weighs so heavy as the pain one feels with someone, for someone, a pain intensified by the imagination and prolonged by 100 echoes. For there is nothing heavier than compassion."
It does, like, if you display compassion or empathy, you can often like take on all the pain of the other person. And it's like, it is one thing to deal with your own pain and your own trauma and to work through that, but it's a completely other thing to like feel someone else's pain and their heaviness and their whatever they're dealing with, to take that on board. It is quite difficult, and it is quite heavy.
Extremely heavy at times, and it's the kind of thing where it's like, you don't have to do it. Like, you can get away with not doing it, but also it's the right thing to do. And by doing that, by taking on that heaviness, you help spare the heaviness of someone else by allowing them to share it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a heaviness, and it kind of, at times when you read it like that, with like nothing heavier than compassion, it kind of sounds like, okay, well, I better not be compassionate because it's heavy. But it's a sacrifice. It's one of those things where it's like the sacrifices we make for other people in order to be better people ourselves, trusting they will do so for us. And I guess a lot of the mindfulness kind of things come back to that idea of sacrifice as well, doesn't it? Or not even better than sacrifice, a better word would be service. Like, compassion is a service we can perform for other people as well. And it's heavy, but it's the thing to do, you know? You got to do it because it comes back around, but even if it doesn't come back around, you got to do it anyway because it's the thing.
The Aotearoa Warriors are good at the thing. They are good at playing rugby league right now, and specifically they are good at defeating the Cronulla Sharks because the Warriors have scored 76 points to 42 in 2 games against the Cronulla Sharks this season. Obviously, fantastic win over the Sharks at Mount Smart Stadium, and I think the Warriors did a pretty good job of backing up an All Blacks test. Like, you're going back to back with All Blacks tests. I don't know if there's many Aotearoa sporting teams that would be able to do that with aplomb, if that's a correct word. And I thought the Warriors gave it a decent crack. Big crowd at Mount Smart Stadium. I think the game day experience for the Warriors is better than the All Blacks anyway. But I'm not going to sit here and say the Warriors are a bigger draw card than the All Blacks. Like, that's a bit far. But I think the Warriors did a fantastic job in going back to back against the All Blacks at their home ground, Mount Smart Stadium as well. And I really enjoy Warriors footy, and I've got 3 key takeaways from that win that I want to isolate here to start us off on the variety show. Got my notebook that I just need to sort out where to hold it because it's going to provide some insights. There was a clear plan. So we're talking about Rocco Berry. Rocco Berry was on fire against the Cronulla Sharks because that left edge for the Cronulla Sharks kind of sucks defensively. Matt Moylan, Sifa Talakai, they're not the best defensive combination. The Sharks also lost Teague Wilton early in that game, which presented the Warriors with the Warriors, I think, already identified a clear weakness to attack. They lose a starting edge forward in that position, have to go through a different defensive combination. So then the Warriors are like, yo, what's that? Let's keep going. Hammer that weakness, and that's what they did, moving the footy to their right edge where Rocco Berry was stationed. And it's just having that clear plan, I think, is a really good sign for the Warriors because they have shown it all season. If there is a weakness, they're going to send their shape and they're going to attack the space, because my second nugget is they love to attack the space. And they're going to attack the space in every channel across the field, every column across the field. The Warriors are going to attack that space. If it's around the ruck, they're attacking that. We've seen the Warriors score tries in the middle of the field with short passing. We've seen line breaks in the middle of the field with short passing. Whenua Blake, Tohu Harris, Dylan Walker, excellent passes. They put their middle homies into space, and they attack the space in the middle, let alone the razzle-dazzle stuff out on the edge, where Sean Johnson is passing to Nickel Crockstar, where Sean Johnson is passing to Rocco Berry, or Jackson Ford on the left with Luke Metcalf. The Warriors will attack every space on the field. Some NRL teams, they're going to score off kicks. Some NRL teams are only going to score out wide. The Warriors attack every space on the footy field, and it starts with Wade Egan. This might be like a super nerdy thing, but Wade Egan's passing is, to me, it epitomizes my favorite thing about the Warriors footy, which is their passing. And we've talked about that all season, but now, having whipped up 2 Wade Egan passing mixtapes for the Twitter and Instagram clips, Wade Egan's passing is neck level. Like, that dude's throwing 10-meter spiral passes either way. He's throwing no-look passes for tries and line breaks. He's attacking defenders and then just slipping it out through the back pocket. Everything's crisp. Everything's to the hands. The passes are fast as well, so the ball moves quickly. Wade Egan's passing out of dummy half is exceptional. He's also averaging the most running meters of his career, which is a bonus as well. But his passing sets the tone for the funkiest thing about Warriors footy this year, which is their passing. Starts with Wade Egan, then it goes through those middle forwards that I talked about. But also, obviously, Sean Johnson, Luke Metcalf, they're good passers. Centers these days need to be able to draw and pass or offload. Rocco Berry, Adam Pompey, rugby union backgrounds. They are fantastic at catch and pass, draw and pass, and the offload. Booyakasha. What else you got?
I am going to start with the fact that on Thursday night, FIFA Women's World Cup kicks off. It's New Zealand against Norway in the first game, and then I think it's Australia versus Ireland afterwards in the second game. And it hasn't started yet, so I can't talk about Football World Cup action so far, but it's massive, and I just didn't feel right to not lead with it. Biggest standalone women's sporting event on the planet, one of the biggest sporting events, full stop. And as far as the Football Ferns go, like my last words leading into the World Cup that I would offer to Football Ferns fans is one thing at a time. The main target is to get that first ever win. It would be nice to make the knockouts, and if they do get their first ever win, they're going to have that opportunity, as I'll mention in a sec. But this is a team that has never had a better chance to win a game at a World Cup, has never won a game at a World Cup, in fact, has a 15-game winless streak in their World Cup history, which is the longest in the world. I found that out this week. It's actually the record for the most games without a win at the I think specifically Women's World Cup, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's also true for the Men's World Cup. And yeah, if they do break that streak, that is a success. Whether they make the knockouts or not, that is a success. To also make the knockouts is to do that twice, is to double what they've never done before. So that's a lot to ask straight away. I'm just saying one thing at a time. Let's focus on getting that first win, and then we'll see where we are. Having said that, I do want to at least leave that door open, because Philippines are the game to target. They're considerably lower ranked. Ferns have beat them with an understrength team within the last 2 years. However, just written previews on the other teams in the group, and I do think Norway and Switzerland, there's at least some potential there. They'll both be heavy favorites to beat the Ferns, but there's some potential there, because neither's been firing on all cylinders despite some star-studded lineups and whatnot. And they're also likely to be playing relatively, because of the style that they play, relatively defensive games, and that is probably going to mean they won't blow the Ferns out, which means a team like the Ferns, who don't score a lot of goals but do try to keep things nice and tidy defensively, low scoring close games, that's exactly the recipe for Football Ferns to be able to sneak a draw, or maybe even sneak a win if things break absolutely perfectly for them. That's the recipe for them to do something. And if they do beat the Philippines in their second game against Switzerland in Dunedin afterwards, the third game, last game of the group's phase, they will have an opportunity to make the knockouts one way or another. If they've won that first game, 6 points almost always puts you through to the next round. And if it doesn't, it'll be because of goal difference. And that's at least something they'll have control over in that final game against Switzerland. But yeah, as much as knockouts would be amazing, I want to keep it realistic and say, let's just focus on getting that win. Looking further afield, I've been thinking a little bit about tournament predictions, because we talked a bit about it last week. And I still do like England. I still probably would lean on England overall, even though they've had a couple injuries. If they're rolling with the same squad they had at the Euros last year, I'd absolutely have them as favourites. Even still, I'm still leaning towards them, and I'm still refusing to pick USA, despite the fact that they did send out a nice Matariki message last week. It was just, nice of them, but let's not get carried away here. They're still USA, and we still want them not to win because they're Americans. But I will say the team that's lingering, and I don't even think it's fair to call them dark horses, I think they're just genuine title contenders, just straight off the bat, would be Spain. And they've been in imperious form. They had a bit of dramas with their sort of the fallout between some key players and the coach, and then the governing body, which backed the coach, who then stopped picking those players. And then everyone seems to be back now. And if they haven't patched things up, they're at least working towards a common cause to try and win this World Cup. They only made it to the quarterfinals of the Euros last year, but they lost 2-1 to England, which was about the closest, most difficult game England had throughout that entire Euros campaign, maybe give or take the final, which I think they went to extra time in to beat Germany. So there's that. Spain have been playing incredibly. In fact, the only team to beat them recently has actually been Australia within the last year or two, which is a little bit crazy. Barcelona have been dominating the Champions League in recent times. Plus, Spain also did put out a nice heartfelt apology for the bad karma of their Haka video thing. So that's nice. Whatever the word is, whatever the word for compassion is. I was trying to wrap it back around to the mindfulness thing. I can't quite do that. But the other reason to get excited about Spain is they are on the New Zealand side of the draw. same as the USA. In fact, that's likely to be the semi-final that's hosted at Eden Park, is Spain versus USA, all things go ahead. So we can just jump in the car and go and watch that Spanish team, which is another reason to get excited, whereas England are on the Australian side of the draw, so we don't get to see them quite as up close. But yeah, man, World Cup starting in a couple of days.
The T20 Blast is a T20 competition in England, and Somerset won that competition thanks to some exceptional mahi from Matt Henry and Ish Sodhi. Matt Henry, he took 7 wickets on finals day. So they play the semi-final and the final on the same day. He took 3 wickets in the semi-final, 4 wickets in the final, and Matt Henry, he finished as the leading wicket taker in the T20 Blast. The best bowler in the T20 Blast. 31 wickets and an average of 13. That's ridiculous. And he took 7 wickets in one day, which is also ridiculous. Ish Sodhi took 3 wickets in the final, all 3 of which skittled the stumps. He finished with 8 wickets and an average of 17. Matt Henry was the most economical bowler in the semi-final. He was the only Somerset bowler to concede less than 5 RPO. Then in the final, Ish Sodhi was the most economical Somerset bowler. He was the only Somerset bowler to concede less than 6 RPO. And in the T20 Blast overall, Ish Sodhi was Somerset's most economical bowler and their only bowler conceding less than 7 RPO. So those two were dominant in the final. They were key contributors to Somerset's finals performance. And Matt Henry, as we discussed on the subscriber podcast, he's on fire. He's taken a lot of wickets in the county championship. He's now back in he's in the test team consistently. Fantastic ODI bowler, and apparently an absolute T20 monster as well. What else you got?
Good old Matt Henry. Well, I've got some NBL final stuff because the NBL finals are happening this week. The matchups are all set. The top 6 has been decided. And this time next week, we will know our 2023 NBL champions. Although it took a wild last round of regular season games in order to decide all that seeding. So it was particularly the second seed. Like, just break down what happened in the second seed. Canterbury played Franklin. Canterbury beat Franklin. Tevin Brown, Troy Baxter Jr., Max Darling all scored 20 plus in that game. Great performance from them, particularly Max Darling, the young Kiwi big man, getting, I think he shot 7 of 10 from the field in that game. Nuts. And then Otago, with the opportunity to go and finish nice and clear, they actually lost to bottom place Taranaki. And that was despite cheeky 23 points and 12 rebounds for Mr. Sam Timmins. What that meant was that second place had 3 teams tied on 12 wins / 24 points. I was trying to work out how they do this, and I thought it was just points differential, in which case Canterbury would have finished second, but it's a little bit above my pay grade to figure out entirely, because I guess what they actually did is they just made it like a mini league between those 3 teams, and it was points differential, but it's only points differential counting between those teams, like games between those 3 teams. I think something like that. Anyway, what happened is Otago got the split. So they finished second, which is a big deal because they follow the Auckland Tuatara straight to the semi-finals. The Tuatara, they lost to the Wellington Saints. They're actually going into the finals on a 2-game losing streak, having won 10 in a row before that. I think we can pretty safely say that was just because they'd already done they'd done the hard graft already and they were just prepping for finals. No reason to get carried away, but it is maybe a point of encouragement for other teams. Auckland finished first, Otago finished second, and then you had Canterbury, Franklin, Wellington, and Hawke's Bay in that order. The Hawke's Bay Hawks got that 6th seed, edging out the Nelson Giants because Hawke's Bay blew away Manawatu thanks to 47 points from Jordan Atai. That is not just a season best for him, not just a season best for his team. That is the most points anyone scored in any individual performance all season. 47 points. Incredible stuff, but also Nelson lost both games, so they'd finished 6th anyway. Nelson Giants just, their star player Avery Woodson was out and they'd missed the last few games, and they just kind of ran out of steam despite some nice work from the bros Callum McRae and Alex McNaught and fellas like that, they put up a little bit of a fight, but they just didn't quite have it in the end. So Hawke's Bay get that 6th spot, which means on Thursday night, clashing with the football Ferns, come to think of it. So probably won't watch this live. But Thursday night, you got Canterbury Rams versus Hawke's Bay Hawks. That's 3rd versus 6th. Then you got 4th versus 5th, which is Franklin Bulls versus Wellington Saints. It's a straight elimination. So the winners of those 2 games advance to the semifinals on Friday. The lower advancing seed will play against the Auckland Tuatara. The higher advancing seed will play against Otago Nuggets. That's on Friday. Then on Saturday, you have the grand final. All these games are going to be at Trust Arena in Auckland. Season's decided right here, next few days. It's not quite the T20 blast of semi-final and final on the same day, but you've got effectively quarterfinals, semis, and final all on back-to-back-to-back days. Something similar, and that's how we're going to decide our NBL 2023 champions.
Just a quick note here about a couple Kiwi-NRL Broncos, specifically a few young Kiwi-NRL Broncos, because during State of Origin, there's always this idea about baby Broncos. And now I've seen these quote-unquote baby Broncos perform really well in the win over the Warriors in Napier, and they just smoked the Bulldogs because Deine Mariner and Xavier Willison, they're outside the Broncos top 17 and they are young players, but I think the only team that I can say with certainty doesn't need Deine Mariner or Xavier Willison is the Penrith Panthers. So that leaves, apart from the Broncos and the Panthers, that's 15 other teams who would happily take Deine Mariner and Xavier Willison. And obviously the Bulldogs kind of suck, so they would love to have Deine Mariner and Xavier Willison. Xavier Willison coming off the bench, he's played edge forward, but he's also played middle. He is massive. He's from the Waikato, and he's just steadily getting repetitions for the Broncos, and I'm enjoying his mahi, but I'm really interested in Deine Mariner. Because when Deine Mariner was initially named 18th man, I think it was, that's all good, that's usual. But then he got selected on the wing, and I was like, ooh, how's Kevy Walters going to handle Deine Mariner coming off the bench? And fair play to Kevy Walters, fair play to the Broncos, because I love the Broncos now after I was poo-pooing them earlier in the off-season. Let's say summer. Over the summer, I was poo-pooing the Broncos. Now I love the Broncos because when the Broncos have Deine Mariner and Xavier Willison in their team, they're so much more funky, and especially when Deine Mariner is coming off the bench, Maris Jr., and he's replacing Keenan Palacia, who was like a starting prop. So what happened was Deine Mariner came off the bench, he replaced the middle forward, and Kevy Walters put Selwyn Cobbo into the middle, with Deine Mariner playing on the wing. Now that's a funky rotation that I think revolved around Selwyn Cobbo, but Deine Mariner's really good, and he's so good that I think he needs to be playing as often as possible for the Broncos, and like he's commanding game time. Kevy Walters came up with a different scheme to help get Deine Mariner on the field. Yes, it's also about Selwyn Cobbo, him getting the footy more often, but this plan also involves Deine Mariner coming off the bench. And I think that tells you a lot about the quality of Deine Mariner. And that quality that was on display in Napier when he was like cruising around Warriors defenders, balanced running style, dynamic, instincts, intuition. It was all fantastic. That was on display against the Bulldogs as well. And that package that I've seen a few times in the NRL with Deine Mariner is elite. And most NRL teams would love to have him, let alone Xavier Willison, who has the size and mobility package that most NRL teams are craving. Although it's not really unique for Kiwi-NRL juniors because, like, I don't know, the Broncos seem to have Caius Fa'atili. He's massive. He's mobile from Christchurch. The Sharks have Felix Fa'atili. They have Salisi Ata. Even the Bulldogs, like they've apparently got Isaac Matalavea Booth, who hasn't played much this season, but he is massive. He is mobile. There is no shortage of massive mobile forwards coming out of Aotearoa, and Xavier Willison is definitely one of them as well.
Right. Well, I said that the NBL is coming to a conclusion, but of course, the basketball doesn't stop bouncing, and the Tauihi League is just started. just overlapping ever so slightly by a fortnight with that one. Tauihi Women's League. First round just happened, and there were some surprises, I will say, like the Southern Hoiho winning twice already to double their win tally from last season. In 2022, they won 1 game. In 2023, they've played 2 games and won 2 games already. Beat both 2022 finalists as well, in fact, to do so, Tokomanoa and the Northern Kahu. So pretty clear to see the standout performer within the Southern Hoiho there was Ashton Prickdale, the American import who had 25 points, 21 rebounds in the first game, also 17-12 in the second one. She won a national title with Stanford a couple years ago and was drafted to the WNBA. A 3rd-round pick, didn't get signed, but was drafted to the WNBA. So that's something to speak of. In fact, there's been a lot of league buzz about the WNBA connections in the Tauihi this year. I think there's 9 players who have been either played in the WNBA or have been drafted to the WNBA with some form of connection to the WNBA. That's cool. But, like, frankly, as far as I've been concerned, I'm much more interested in the 10 players from the Tall Ferns Asia Cup squad who are playing in the Tauihi season this year. Like, it's nice to have good imports, but you also want to have the best of the best from the locals too. And we've got that. That's the most exciting thing about this season. Just scrolling through the teams here, Northern Kahu have exactly half of those 10 players. Akene Tera Reid is there. Crystal Ledger Walker is there. Ratoya Tamilo, Talia Tupaya actually, because I've been saying a few times about how Charlie Ledger Walker is going to be the first New Zealander drafted into the WNBA, second to play because Megan Campaign wasn't drafted, signed as an undrafted free agent, but did play a few games in the WNBA. So far, the only one. Well, might have to rearrange at least some of that because Talia Tupaya was drafted to the WNBA back when she was eligible for Australia. She's now a Tall Ferns international. So I guess we say that she's the first Kiwi drafted, I suppose, but never got signed and didn't play. So there is that. But she's playing for the Kahu, the defending MVP. Who else is there? Penina Davidson as well. She's the 5th player from that Kahu squad, including 3 of their starters playing from the Tall Fern squad. 3 of their starters are playing for the Kahu. They've also signed Tess Madgen, the Australian veteran, who, again, one of those players with WNBA experience, which is a surprising one because you don't normally get established Australian players of that caliber coming over and playing this kind of league. But I will just say Tess Madgen been playing for the Melbourne Boomers. Penina Davidson been playing for the Melbourne Boomers. I think that's just some great recruitment from Miss Davidson there. Moving on to the Mid-North Phi. They don't have any of the Tall Fern squad, but, well, they don't even have many of their last squad. They only have 2 returning players from last year. But they did beat the Mainland Pokai in game 1 on the back of some excellent import play, plus including 32 points from McKenna Dale. McKenna Dale was born in America, I think more or less seems to count as American, but did grow up for a spell in New Zealand and played New Zealand under 18s, I think it was back in the day. So she's registered as a local player. She is a dual national. Tall Ferns prospect right there and scored 32 points in the opening round. Tokomanoa Queens, defending champs. Like the Kahu, they've got a big chunk of that Tall Ferns squad. Stella Beck is there, Josie Truesdale, Paris Mason, Grace Hunter, they're all there, as well as like Lily Taulele, who was part of the extended squad but didn't make the Asia Cup cut. And, Tegan Graham, I think, has been around thereabouts as too. She's one of the better players coming out of college. I think she might have played last year as well. Good shooter there. So Mainland Pokai, they've got Ezra McGoldrick from that squad, but they do also, she's the only one, but they do also have Lauren Hippolyte, who was unavailable for the Tall Ferns Asia Cup, who might have played otherwise. Sean Rabadi is there as well, another star Kiwi player. And the Southern Hoiho don't have anyone for the Asia Cup, but they do have Zoe Richards, who is, again, one of the extended sort of squaddy players and has played a bit in the past. Samara Gallagher is another one. That's 10 of the 12 Tall Ferns from the Asia Cup are playing in the Tauihi this year. The only ones who aren't, Charlie Ledger Walker and Taylor Dalton. I'm guessing the reason they're not is more because they're still at college in the USA, and therefore there's obvious cross commitments there, and also there's that little bit of conflict about like professional versus amateur stuff. But they're the only 2 of that Tall Ferns Asia Cup squad who aren't playing. That's exciting. That's the reason I will be watching this league.
The reason why I'm not watching Lydia Ko on the LPGA Tour is because she has played 10 tournaments and she has made the top 10 once. In the rest of her 9 tournaments, she has finished worse than tied for 30th. So last year was all about Lydia Ko, consistently top 10, just exceptional on the LPGA Tour, demanding that you tap in, you check in with her mahi. That's not the case this year, and it's all good. No dramas. We're not here to figure out what's wrong. I'm just telling you. She's not in the top 10 very often. She's not really commanding. You check in and tap in with her. It is what it is. What else you got, Chief?
Well, as far as commanding some attention goes, though, I'll just roll through 5 of the quick blokes from the Flying Kiwis realms who I've been paying close attention to throughout their preseason stuff. Number 1 is Marko Stamenic, Red Star Belgrade, new signing, moved there on a free transfer. Started every single game so far in preseason in the midfield, mostly playing as an 8, occasionally as a 6. Won a silly little trophy in Russia in some like sort of glorified tournament thing that they played. Most importantly, he's at a Champions League caliber club and immediately getting, a big impact for them. Seems to be a key player for them already, which is incredible stuff. Sarpreet Singh at Hansa Rostock hasn't had, they're easing him in a little bit, new signing as well. But the thing that stood out so far from what I've seen is that he has been used as a number 10. He's playing through the middle, a bit closer to how the Wellington Phoenix used him. And usually he was, Regensburg, Bayern, they tried him on the wing. This is Sarpreet Singh playing through the middle. I reckon that's a nice cheeky aspect to this as well that I'm quite excited about. Chris Wood, Nottingham Forest. This is more in the Lydia Ko realms than the Marko Stamenic realms here, because he is currently out injured, has been out injured since the All Whites versus China games. And there have been some rumors that Forest might want to sell him, even though they only technically bought him like 2 weeks ago, which is weird stuff. But they have a bloated squad. They want to offload some strikers. I suspect Wood won't be one of them. But if an offer comes in and he's the kind of player someone might want to get, a promoted team might want a striker who can score goals, that's possible. But he's got to get fit and prove himself first is the issue there. So he's in a little bit of a tricky one, more race against fitness than anything else. Lydia Ko at Empoli. Well, they've just sold Fabiano Parisi. That is a done deal. That is sealed, signed, delivered. He's gone to Fiorentina. Presumably means Kakache will be the starting left back for Empoli next season. And I think he did actually have a preseason game. They won 10-0 against a lower league team. So the game was nothing special, but he scored a goal, set up a couple. But the thing that stood out was he was wearing the number 13 jersey. He wore 21 when he first signed there. He moved to number 3 last year. Now he's gone to 13. So 3 different numbers in 3 different years. But 13 is what he wore for the Phoenix. 13, I'm pretty sure, is what he wears for the All Whites as well. I'm guessing that's his preferred number. That's another nice little aspect for him there. Lucky 13. And then Ben Waine at Plymouth Argyle, who, again, he had a preseason game where he scored a goal. But that was starting for a team that was, relatively stacked with youngsters. When you saw them going more to their first 11 team, it was Waine playing off the bench, 30-odd minutes kind of thing. And I think that's about where he is. It's about where he should be in that squad too. They've just been promoted to the championship. You wouldn't expect him to be a starter. He's coming from the A-League, battling for minutes, getting on the bench most weeks. That's what we're looking at there. And you just take your opportunities and move onwards. That's where Ben Waine is leading into this next season. What is your final offering?
My final offering is another Warriors SG ball player who has been promoted to New South Wales Cup. That is Patrick Moimoi. He is from De La Salle College. He actually played in the Future Warriors homecoming game last year against the Tigers, along with Ali Leotau and Jacob Laban. And he's followed the Warriors 2023 development route of playing SG ball, then playing Fox Premiership, local Premier men's footy in Auckland, and then moving up to New South Wales Cup. And he was starting centre for the New South Wales Cup Warriors. He joins Eddie Iramia, also from De La Salle, Ituati Fukafuka, Tanistau Smith, Leka Halasima, and Jacob Laban as players who played SG ball who have also played New South Wales Cup. And in case you missed it, Leka Halasima scored another amazing try. He's probably, I don't know if he's the best prospect, but he's the youngest prospect doing the same stuff that the every other prospect is doing. So he's doing all the same stuff, but he's doing it younger, which makes him the best prospect. And you need to know about Leka Halasima. And if you have never really cared about the Warriors junior system, now is the time to start caring. Now is the time to tap in, because not only do you have Leka Halasima, you've got a lot of other young players playing really good footy in New South Wales Cup, and all of this is only going to expand next year. But simple point, you need to learn about Leka Halasima because he's really young and he's really good. What's your last note there?
Well, buzzy note to think about there is that Leka Halasima and Millie Clegg are both 17 years old. That's the future of Kiwi sports right there.
And Millie Clegg's going to be at the World Cup.
She is going to be at the World Cup. She'll probably get some minutes by the looks of it. It seems to be the backup striker. I would love to spend a bunch of minutes talking about Sam Waardenburg at the Summer League here for Minnesota Timberwolves, but unfortunately, he didn't get a lot of minutes himself. So I'd be talking about him for longer than he actually played. He went over there, picked up a knee injury with the Timberwolves, didn't play the first game, didn't play the second game, didn't play the third game, wasn't looking good at that stage, but he did pop up off the bench in the fourth game against the Sacramento Kings, got some first quarter minutes, went out there, tried to pass the ball around a little bit, grabbed a big offensive rebound. He got to the rim and was fouled, made both his free throws, so he got a couple points there. Also got blocked at the rim a little bit later and fouled a three-point shooter, which isn't ideal, but after a minute 51 of action, he went and sat on the bench, chucked a towel on his knee. Pretty sure that meant there was probably an ice pack under that on the knee. Didn't see him again in that game. He didn't play their last game either. He actually went to Summer League last year with the Dallas Mavericks, and I think he had an ankle injury and didn't play at all. So then he went with the Timberwolves this year, got a knee injury, played a minute 51. So at least he got out there this time. That was nice. But I think, if we're talking about Sam Waardenburg to the NBA, them scouts are going to have to stick to his NBL highlight reel for now because he didn't quite get the opportunity to do it at Summer League, unfortunately.
Musical jam, and we're all about Aotearoa sport, and we're all about Aotearoa music, and we're doing some big things in Aotearoa sport right now, hosting the Women's World Cup. We got, what did I say, Warriors are winning, Matt Henry, Sodhi, T20 Blast champions. A lot of great Kiwi athletes doing fantastic things. At the same time, you've got Fat Freddy's Drop touring the world in front of sold out crowds performing their big jams that the world absolutely loves. So I just want to shout out Fat Freddy's Drop, the greatest Aotearoa musical act ever. Big up them because they're basically a Women's World Cup and the Warriors put together. So shout out them. What's your musical jam this week?
Well, I've had my cowboy hat on with new albums from Lucas Nelson and Coulter Wall. Good yarns there. Coulter Wall has the deepest voice you've ever heard. I think he's actually Canadian, and Lucas Nelson has a very undeep voice, and he's the son of Willie Nelson, which is cool. Been following him for a while. Those are both good. Don't mind admitting I'm partial to a bit of the old country and western stylings. And I did mention last week that Juno had a couple. This is moving back to Dunedin here. Had a couple songs, sunny, surfy kind of Kiwi alt rock, lovely stuff. Going to shout that out again this week too.
Big up yourself, love yourself, kia kaha, stay beautiful, church.